say it's so refreshing just to have people that are just so like common sense awake here. You know, with the new gruesome now statewide mask mandate again. I just saw that in Epoch Times. Wasn't even aware, but I was like, oh, I wonder if anything's going to change in town. No, it was actually less masks.
Yeah. Less and less people wearing the things, even from before the mandate. And then, you key in on each other and you have great conversations. And I was down Santa Barbara recently and, just total normie world, but going to a store, everybody's unmasked, but there'd be this, we weren't, and you'd see that one other person without a mask, you get together right away and you talk for an hour, and so,
it's a bit of a gift. It's allowing people, and I think the bifurcation of society is becoming more apparent. And I'd love to talk to you with you a little bit about that, Reinette, today. But we have Reinette Senum on. We're live. I'm going to go ahead and start the podcast so we can get this going. What's that, Reinette?
Reinette Senum.
Yeah. Where are you coming from today?
I'm in Nevada City.
Oh, wonderful. And have you guys gotten some weather? Have you gotten some snow yourself?
Yeah, we've had snow. It was snowing off and on the last 2 days. And now it's raining. So the snow's melting. It was really beautiful. And I think we might have a white Christmas Eve.
Nice. That's always fun.
It is. Yeah, I love it.
That's fun for us Californians. We have family visiting from the Midwest, and they're probably hoping for sunny skies. They're coming from Michigan. My kids are like, "Oh, we might have a white winter, a white Christmas," and they're I'm sure they're like, "Oh God, great." Okay, I'm gonna hit record, and we'll fire this bad boy up. So excited to have you on today, Reinette. We're gonna have a great talk.
It's great to be here.
Okay, here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live from the beautiful state of Jefferson up here on the Smith River, where freedom still reigns supreme. People are wide awake and using common sense and hugging each other and saying Merry Christmas. What do you know? What a fantastic idea, huh? But the holidays are here, and our favorite time of year, and we got a little bit of snow the last few days. We're looking, Mount Shasta is opening up there, so I just got notification. So we're reserving our first ski snowboard trip. Excited to do that, even maybe next week with the fam. So life couldn't be better up here in the great north, the Nort, as they say.
Nice. Hopefully I'll get up there with you sometime.
Oh, that would be such a pleasure, man. To have you join us and ski on Mount Shasta. That would be an extreme pleasure, considering the majestic nature of that mountain and what it means to us.
If you can keep up with me.
Well, I am a snowboarder, so I know sometimes we go a little slow because we're on our butt a lot trying to jump and stuff, but I'm getting a little old for that. Yes. Always the competitive nature in the doctor here. He's it's great.
That ain't going away.
No. Well, your son loves to board as well. And both your sons, and I've had pleasure being on them with the mountain, and they're the same way, and they're rippers. And I will say I can rip down the mountain. So it would be an extreme pleasure for me to share a chairlift with you someday. So let's make that happen.
I agree.
Today, we are super blessed to have Reinette Senum back. And this is going to be a great talk. And I can't think about a more pressing talk to have. We actually had Reinette speak at Music in Sky this summer, which was awesome to have her come out and join us for this. It was really quite an event, Reinette, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that today with you and get your reaction to how that was. We are planning for another one in June, it looks like, hopefully, in the Humboldt-Mendocino area. Tentatively right now we're looking, so it'd be wonderful to have you back. That might work out great for your timing with what you're up to. So let's talk about that after the call. But Reinette Senum returns to discuss her California gubernatorial campaign and her continued fight to preserve our divine right to self-determination. One of our most popular Alfacast guests, Reinette Senum, returns for what promises to be an inspiring and entertaining interview. In our last episode with Reinette, she shared stories from her amazing life, from braving the trans-Alaskan wilderness by dogsled to filmmaking, writing, and community activism. As the mayor of Nevada City, California, Reinette rose to her oath of office to oppose Governor Newsom's statewide mandate to wear masks by correctly asserting the order could not be enforced. In similar fashion, Reinette has set her sights on a much larger quest to become the next governor of California. In Reinette's own words from electreinette.com, which is her new site, you should check out. I am running for governor as an independent, common sense candidate focused on core values and ethics. But in order to turn California around, we are going to need an unprecedented effort by all of us working together. Based upon the nations of the Iroquois Confederacy that originally inspired our United States Constitution, we will use the 7-generation principle as the primary guiding force of this campaign because all decisions made today should serve the next 7 generations. Now is the time to recommit to a common sense, value-based local control system of self-governance that is centered around the health and well-being of all children, their parents and caregivers, and all the business owners, farmers, teachers, and workers who make the state golden. When I am governor, Californians will once again have the freedom to manage their own day-to-day lives and the lives of their families. Oh, imagine that. I will ensure that the state always provides comprehensive, transparent information in a clear manner and then allows people and communities to make their own decisions through the normal democratic process. One of my first acts will be to drive through the strongest legal protections against any future governor ever again, illegally and unconstitutionally demolishing our state and its institutions and traditions. Boom. Reinette Senum, welcome to Alfacast. Bear Lando, excited about this one, huh?
Yeah, I'm really excited. And hey, Reinette, we all know each other personally behind the scenes by our first names. I believe your last name is pronounced Senum.
Senum, like Senum to Sacramento.
Oh, my bad. Sorry about that.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, we never used our last name, so, forgive us for that. So Reinette Senum. So good to have you here. Last time it was a lot of fun because you shared your remarkable life. Holy cow, going across the Alaskan wilderness in dog sled by yourself. And
actually, I had a dog. I pulled the sled. That's what's so funny. I didn't have a dog for the first 200 miles, and then I got a dog, and he helped me pull the sled. So yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, even more impressive. Writer, filmmaker. You have indeed had a remarkable life. But now your more recent quest is even more remarkable. Dovetailing off of your political career as mayor of Nevada City, and now going for the governorship, and boy, do we need one. There's a misconception about California out there. I'm a native Californian, and grew up in ranching communities, more rural California. And California, now I'm not red, blue, and all that stuff. That's just another ruse to keep us all divided. And I love what you say. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a Californian. That's the way we all feel. And, back when I was growing up, dad was a Democrat, mom was a Republican, but they had the same philosophies, ideals, just, maybe had a liking to one candidate versus the other. Now it's like a complete schism. And what people don't understand elsewhere in the country is that Californians really want their state back. And if you want to go red, blue, we're actually a red state. And in fact, when Newsom stole the last recall election, just blatantly stole it. Sorry, nobody can convince me that was for real, because everybody we know in our area can't stand the guy. We helped get him recalled in the first place. Okay, so now we have another illegitimate politician, and there's California groups in sizable numbers, one in particular that I've had some affiliation with, that are doing weekly grievances for the last few years, formalizing it, doing it, way the Constitution mandates it and everything. And let me just read you one little thing here, just like the first paragraph. And then every week, I think we're up to almost 90 grievances now. And grievances are supposed to be heard by these clowns. Of course, they're ignored, and they have the help of the complicit media. So insurrection, the government of California, the current socialist governor, dictator, and monoparty system, along with local officials, are following a coordinated design with the intent to actively engage in acts of insurrection against the U.S. Constitution. And then it goes into the Insurrection Act of 1807 and in that. Now, acts of succession, the California government, in conjunction with the socialistic state executive, instituted wherever the current socialist governor dictator has usurped power, has actively engaged in acts of succession and have created a reign of terror on United States citizens living in California with the intent to succeed from the United States of America, to thus destroy the very union of states which secures our liberty and freedom. So folks, if you just think, we're a bunch of, nuts and fruits out here in California, you're mistaken. And there's a lot of really good patriots out here, patriots in the true oldest sense. And, we aren't going to stand for it much longer. And Reinette, you're out there leading the charge. And I just admire you so much for what you're doing. So what we'd really like to hear from you today is, all about your campaign, how you're going about it, your new book, and what we can all do to help you.
Right. Thank you so much. And this is fascinating to hear what you're doing. And I wasn't cued into all that. So the amount of activism I've been seeing in the last 2 years is just, it's phenomenal. I've said to people, I've seen more people engaged now than ever before. And I've been in the trenches and in the foxholes for almost 20 years. So it's been really, that's been like the silver lining around all this. So my campaign, well, first of all, I think it's really important to understand that I never ever thought I'd be running for governor. And it was a 2-month decision-making process between myself and my partner, Susan, of 14 years, because she, it's going to affect her. And ultimately, Bear, as I'd said before, when I was talking to the 2 individuals who are now my 2 chiefs of staff for this campaign, I was like, if you want me just to have another campaign and do more of the same, I'm not interested. I'm not going to waste my time and my energy and my focus. But if you want to do something extraordinary that's never been done before, then I'm game. And so it's understandable why we're being shadow banned, why this campaign is being censored, why it's very clear why, because this campaign, the foundation of it is very, very powerful. So what is it? Well, first of all, one of the things I'd said, and it was very important that these 2 chiefs of staff of mine were coming from the perspective of the mama bears, the papa bears, and their concern for children. So we had an instantaneous connection. It's like, look, if the children don't have a future, we don't have it today. So the whole thing was, I was saying, as a person in the trenches, I've been watching the evisceration of our communities and our mom and pop businesses and our representation and rule of law. And I was wondering, why is this happening? And then I started to really look at our Constitution, and historically speaking, most people don't realize that our U.S. Constitution was inspired by the 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, our indigenous people. And interestingly enough, our forefathers forgot these 2 important components of this vessel, which is the anchor and the compass. The compass being every decision you make today should serve 7 generations from now. And the anchor being the elders, when you're making decisions, should look back the last 7 generations and fold in the wisdom to almost kind of create like, a stabilizer, right? On this vessel. And I do know as a sailor and a former commercial fisherwoman that if you have a boat that does not have momentum, that is not pushing forward and going through the storm and through the waves, a boat will bob up and down till it falls apart and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Essentially, that's what's happening to our Constitution. And what I mean by momentum is that if our Constitution had a goal, like what's it heading towards? Where's the Constitution going to? Well, it should be going towards the shore of that 7 generation principle. That should be the wind filling the sail, right? So what we're doing is we're giving it the wind and that momentum, so it has something to head towards. And it also allows us to set a standard to measure our elected officials by. Really important. So there's that component right there, okay? So what we did is when we started this campaign, we actually started just over a year ago. And the first thing we did is we built a blueprint for California. It is a 30-page contract with Californians Interestingly enough, it was inspired by Newt Gingrich's contract with Californians and Ice Cube's contract with Black Americans. So we have this combination, right? And so we fold the two of them into, and it's not about left or right at all. It is about common sense. It is about rule of law. It is about engaging citizenry unlike ever before and allowing them to be the leaders they really are. So the whole basis of this contract with Californians is based upon that seven generation principle. And we have 7 points like common sense education, like, new civic engagement, food and farms, natural resource conservation, and so on. And what we did was we wrote this 30-page contract. It is a living document, which means it's not static. It's never done. In fact, we have another iteration that'll be coming out probably in about a month or so. It's just this, I believe, in my style of leadership has always been one of the collective genius. I might have an idea. I think, hey, I got this great idea. But once you allow that collective genius to build, always my greatest ideas are surpassed from my own individual dream or thought when I allow that collective genius to flow. So this blueprint is really the collective genius on paper. And so the objective is to continue building it and creating it as we go, because we keep learning more and more beautiful, incredible models out there and programs out there and ideas out there that are absolutely scalable, and we can make it go statewide. So we have that. And the other thing that's really important is that we looked at the biggest threats California is facing, the biggest threats that we're facing. And we did the ultimate art of war, Aikido move, and we've transmuted those threats into our biggest opportunities. So what do I mean by that? Well, the fact that we have only 64 harvests left of topsoil, right? That's a big problem. So we're one of the big bases of our whole entire contract with Californians is regenerative farming, is rebuilding our topsoil, rebuilding our pollinator populations, right? And also identifying and admitting that we are in a relationship crisis with almost everything around us, right? We are in a relationship crisis with our government, with our education system, with our media, with our community, right? With the banking system. I mean, even with our own bodies and our own family members, for God's sake, and it's like, we are going to be spending the rest of our lives healing ourselves. And if we're really smart, and we can utilize that healing as a mechanism to rebuild and base our economies upon. So what we're doing is we're looking at, for instance, healthy living. Well, why don't we just start with good eating, healthy eating? Why don't we make sure that we don't have food deserts in the inner cities? Why don't we make sure that we have victory type of gardens, right? Little, produce gardens in our neighborhoods, in our nursing homes, in our schools, in those empty lots in the neighborhood, right? So we start, and that's also a beautiful mechanism to bring people back into the fold, talk about something other than divisive politics, focus on getting your hands dirty, right? Growing your food, harvesting your food, and then celebrating your bounty together, right? And this also brings in the generations. And you have to understand that during World War II, our victory gardens on our front and backyards, that provided 40% of our food in America. We can do that again, and we're going to need to, more than likely, with the shortages coming our way. So this is really a very unusual campaign. And also, I'm not running with any political affiliation whatsoever. I'm telling people I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I am a Californian first and foremost, and so are you. And we've been riding this bird, right? Voting for the left wing, voting for the right wing. And I'm saying, can we finally please just vote for the bird, and stop voting and think that this wing or that wing is going to get us where we need to go. No, we are in this mess because we've been falling prey to this divisive politics. And for the first time, come June 2022, I'm challenging everybody, whether you're a Republican or a Libertarian or a Democrat or a Green, for the first time, vote for Californians. And I have to challenge people. Just spend a couple minutes and ask yourself, as the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world, are we as golden as we can be? Is our infrastructure good? Is it tight? Is it best it could be? Do we have potholes in our roads? Should those be fixed? How about that homeless situation, that humanitarian crisis? Has that been taken care of? What about all the mom and pop businesses that have shuttered, right? The joblessness, the suicide rates, the depression, right? The addiction, and so on. What about our representative government? Are we really being represented? How about all those taxes and fees that are just usurping all the money from our pockets? Can we maybe tighten that up a little bit? So you have to ask yourself, am I really happy with the current situation of California? And if I am not happy with where California is right now, why would I continue to vote as I've always voted? Because as we know, that definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So if you're going to vote as you've always voted, you have to say to yourself, well, then obviously I want more of the same.
Reinette, can I ask you a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of non-Californians listening here. Why should they care about what's going on in California?
Oh, great question. Okay, first of all, California is almost 40 million people. We're huge. We are a huge economic generator for the whole entire United States, right? We're big. If we lose California, that is going to be a gigantic domino that is going to fall. And it will at some point crush the other states. And you might be in Idaho, you might be in Florida, you might go, oh, we're fine. And you have to understand what we're being subjected to really is the art of war. We are in World War III. This is a spiritual war. And I've been saying this since the get-go. Please don't kid yourself. And it is the art of war. In fact, I encourage everyone to go out there and get Sun Tzu's Art of War, 2,500-year-old book, for you to understand what is being played, how we are being gamed, right? And then how we can also game back, in fact. But the thing is that we have been led to believe, oh, that's New York City. Oh, that's California. I'm not. Well, that is by design, right? And I actually did a live on this a couple of weeks ago on my Instagram saying, there's this methodology used here in California by Caltrans, California Transportation, that repairs and builds our highway and infrastructure. And when you have let's say a little highway, a little road coming from the city to your town, they don't build this huge superhighway and they start from the city and just slowly expand towards you, because that would alert you to a danger, to a threat. But instead what they do, the methodology is like, oh, we'll just expand a little here. We'll expand a little there. Oh, we'll just do a little. And then one day you wake up and they've expanded that last little remaining piece. And the next thing you know, you wake up one morning and there's a superhighway to your doorstep and your town has changed forever. That's the method they're using right now on us. They're not crushing every state. They're not crushing every city within California. They're only doing a little here, a little there. And that keeps you placated to think, I'm not in danger. That's Santa Cruz. That's Los Angeles. That's San Francisco. Those liberals, that liberal state, that liberal city. It's not us. That is a method that keeps you placated and thinking that you are not being threatened. California is paramount. I'm asking all Americans, as a matter of fact, we have an action item for you. We are the proverbial frog in the boiling pot of water. A lot of Californians do not even feel the effects, don't even realize it, especially in the cities. When you go from the rural area to the cities, it is surreal. And it's like they're swimming in it. They don't even see it anymore. And so we need people who are outside of the boiling pot of water to say, hey, you're boiling, right? So we're asking people, every single American out there, we're talking about 340 million of them. If you know a Californian, we want you to reach out to them. We want you to text them. We want you to call them on the phone. We want you to email them, reach them on Instagram, Facebook, however you can, and let them know, hey, there's a candidate who has no political affiliation whatsoever, who's speaking on behalf of the 7th generation, right? And is also bringing the wisdom of our elders and is fighting the good fight. And you're not hearing about her because she's being shadow banned, she's being censored, and she's got something real. And I have been laying forward with this campaign a blueprint, because I don't want to pull a Pelosi, which is you got to vote for the bill in order to find out what's in it. I don't think anybody should be voting for a candidate unless they know what they're really voting for. So Americans have to understand that if we think that, oh, that's California, that those liberal fruitcakes, if we fall, you might have 6 months, you might have a year in your state, you might have 2 years, but this is the art of war. You will be crushed. So all hands on deck, not just in California, but every single resident in every single state in California has to push back, has got to alert Californians to what's really happening and what we really can do, and something they can really vote for, who's going to crush it. Because I'm absolutely 100% here to monkey wrench the system and restore the rule of law in California.
Yeah, and we're also seeing in rural areas, certain farmers and ranchers are being targeted one by one. It's happening here in Southern Oregon, happening in Nevada, people we know in California, because the lands have been sold out from underneath us for the minerals to foreign powers, mostly the People's Republic of China.
Right.
And the politicians, and of course, our Governor Newsom is, might as well be living over there now because he's working entirely for them. And so, they definitely have an agenda. And for us folks, we live out in, kind of some wilderness area here, but we're in no way breathing easy because we know what's up, and they're coming for all of us. They especially want to get rid of the rural folks because we're in the way of them grabbing the mineral rights.
I just found out last week, somebody told me, and it was shocking, that she said all along the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevadas, that they are digging out 3 feet of topsoil and shipping it to China. No, they're
insane.
They're coming for our assets, you guys. China is running out of farmland. China has a gigantic population that continues to explode, right? We have water, we have trees, we have soil, we have farmland, we have gold, we have oil, right? We have natural gas, we have cities, we have assets. You had better believe that we are highly, highly valuable. And for us to think that this is not a war, and as I said, I've been saying it for over a year and a half. As soon as we came out of our first lockdown, and you and I were talking about this, Bear and Mike, that I was seeing my community as they were really coming out for the first time, and they had this look of shock, of PTSD in their faces. And I kept thinking, what happened? And I realized that, we were all in front of our screens, and whatever screen you had, whether it was an iPad or an iPhone or a laptop, it was instilling the fear of God into you. And it was psychological warfare. And it reminded me of when I went to Hurricane Katrina after that had happened. I went a couple of times and did animal rescue and cleaning up and rebuilding. And these individuals, even months later, still had this look of a shock in their face. So that's exactly what I recognized it as. And at that point, I realized, we're being warred against. This is psychological disinformation, warfare, and people, the good people of California and America, for the most part, at that time, did not know.
Yeah, the Wuhan stuff, we talked about this in the last talk, but with people falling over in the streets and the just mass insanity there, people being locked, boarded into their apartments, that was theater. That was straight up theater. And they used that to scare the hell out of the world and psychologically create, as you say, like this entire kind of resonance of fear. And I think it's plain as day now. And I was guilty of it. I was like stuck. My eyes were stuck to the screen watching that and awe and wonder, like, what is going on here? And yeah, it's pretty wild that China is they're up against it right now too, because they've been suffering from a lot of casualties in terms of food reduction due to natural disasters. The fact that they're now with the entire bubble popping in the real estate market there. Evergrande is a massive default. They've got all these Ponzi's going on there because it shows the destruction of centralization, of centralized planning and corruption through corrupt capital markets with the pure crony capitalism they have going on there, where they have these, it's famous there, right? They have all these cities with high rises everywhere that are completely empty, like these empty cities.
They're now imploding them. They're literally dropping these huge skyscrapers and apartment complexes that are like 30 stories, and they're just dropping one after another, and you're like, wait, what's going on? So the debt. So I bring this up, Reinette, because I love that you bring up it's time to not only take California back, but get our defenses up, because we know China's coming for us. And the way we do that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I think I know your thoughts, through resiliency, through going local, through getting strong in our ability to create our own food, our own energy, and getting our governance back so we can defend ourselves, defend our land and all that. So I'd love to hear more about your ideas there, because I think that it really comes down to us and our neighborhood and our families and our friends figuring this out. 100%. So our leaders have been duping us for generations, thinking that they're the ones really in control, that we have to ask for their permission, that our lives and the trajectory of our world is guided upon their bills and legislation. And they could not be further from the truth. And I tell people, like, look at guys, I know as a council person, two-term, in fact, I won my third term, but I stepped down before taking oath, and a two-time vice mayor and two-time mayor, that elected officials and the government don't want the citizenry to be informed. They don't want them to know how powerful they are. And I butted against that over and over and over again, just in the small little Nevada City area, as a council member, as a mayor, because knowledge is power. And the government doesn't want you to really have that kind of power. They want you to believe that they're the almighty powerful. And so I let people know, like, look at guys, yeah, bills are passed, legislations, so on, and policies, this happens. But on average, we have 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And those thoughts are connected to actions. And those actions, when you look at the multitude of human beings on this planet, adds up to billions and billions of decisions and actions every day. So I also challenge people, like, look at, yes, I'm running for governor. Yes, I've got a team behind me that is serious. They know, like what we're talking about, they know what's at stake. And they also know the potential of what we can do. This is our opportunity to do what we never had the opportunity to do before. But I want to let people know that, yes, I'm running for governor, but your power, you need to know how powerful you are as an individual within the context of your own life and as a leader within your own community. And so when I talk about the 7-generation principle, I'm like, look, I'm running for governor, but this is all hands on deck. Don't think for 1 second that one elected official is going to save us. We need everybody. So what I'm doing is I'm challenging people to run at every single level, the school board level, right? The city, the county, assembly, the state, the federal level. But I'm not talking to you like I want you to run at this party or that party. I don't care what your party affiliation is. You can be whatever party affiliation you want. I'm just going to ask from wherever you stand, your vantage point is to run with the 7th generation principle as your platform, to answer to the 7th generation principle within your leadership and your decision making. So that's as if you can run for some kind of elected position. But then I'm asking you, just as a human being, to also fold that 7-generation principle into your daily decision-making. So if you're a farmer or you're a police officer or a doctor or a teacher, CEO, executive director, start thinking 7-generation principle. And I have people saying, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what does that look like? I'm like, okay, I'll give you a couple examples. It's really simple. And they're tiny little things that add up. Like, for instance, let's say you're a farmer, you've got your crop, you've got your weeds, you've got a road. You want to get rid of the weeds. Do you spray the weeds with Roundup or do you spray it with white vinegar? Which better serves the 7th generation? Let's say you want to take your food to go. You can take it in a plastic throwaway container or a stainless steel or glass container. Which better serves the 7th generation? Now, this may seem insignificant, but as you guys know, when I crossed Alaska, it was one little tiny, what seemed insignificant step at a time that got me from one side of Alaska at 55 below to the other side of Alaska. It was not one gigantic, huge leap. It was a series of small, intentional steps in one particular direction. So whether or not I win this gubernatorial campaign in California, and I think that I actually can, because people are hungry for this, our objective is twofold. Yeah, we want to win, but B, we want to change the face of California through this campaign itself. We want to change the culture, the gestalt, the zeitgeist of California. We want to change how people show up and how they think about their leadership and where we're going. And decentralization is key. Decentralizing our energy grid, decentralizing even our water, our farms, right? That is the best buffer against some kind of catastrophic disasters or power going down or food interruptions or transportation interruptions or freight interruptions. The best thing we can do is decentralize across the board.
Yeah.
And decentralizing media is absolutely important. And right here, we're an example of that. We're just a little small podcast, but we reach thousands every week. How many thousands of people are doing these independent kind of presentations? We've got the event coming up, this next week, which is going to do, 100,000
starts
people
tomorrow.
there. Yeah, I'm involved with something in a little bit that is probably going to reach 1 million people. So all of these things add up. So when you look at the legacy networks, they're really losing big time. So we just can't give them any of our energy.
You're right. And I do say there is a virus for sure. It is the virus of the media. It is the virus. The only reason why we're in the hole that we're in is because of the media. They have been the messenger. And I'm telling you, it's so bad. it's so atrocious that I am 3 blocks away from a little radio station here in Nevada City called KVMR. I was a broadcaster for almost a decade. And they closed their doors to the broadcasters the day Newsom gave his original, lockdown orders, stay-at-home orders. And they never really fully recovered. The broadcasters were never able to return. Now, if they are, they have to have the jab, and they can only perpetuate a certain narrative. And it's no longer about the fairness doctrine, about giving fair time to both sides. And what's absolutely simply amazing to me is this little radio station has now a former broadcaster who is running for governor, still living in their little town, and they won't mention it. It is time that we remove the virus, which is the media, and go to the people who don't have big money in their pockets. Go to substack.com. That's phenomenal. Go to your type of right podcast. Go to mine. I'm on BitChute. Reinette Senum's Chew on This. I spent a whole year and a half going out there and making, and now there's so much I'm not really focused because I feel like people can find these sources, but I was going out there trying to find experts in the respective fields to bring the information the public was not getting so they could make an informed decision. And now there's a plethora of those options, right? Go to Children's Health Defense, the Defender. They're superb in their information. And I think that people need to understand too that anytime you see anyone being deemed a conspiracy theorist, January 6th insurrectionist, white supremacist, blah, 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 blah. That is your key to like, oh, I got to go check that person out. I got to go see what they're saying because obviously they're over the target. That is definitely your key, your note, your cue to go check that person out because obviously they must be speaking to some truth. And I do believe, Bear, that we are absolutely seeing the death of allopathic medicine, except for, catastrophic kind of medicine, I think this is the death. The trust will never come back for allopathic care ever again. In what we're doing to our children, never again. I think we are seeing death of media as we know it. I think we are seeing the death of globalization as we know it, and good riddance, and I think that we are going to have a winter where we're going to see a lot of people going into an existential crisis because they're going to have to come to grips with what they've done to themselves, their bodies, their family, their employees, their children, their parents, people they've been pushing this jab on, and they're going to have to really come to grips. But ultimately, I have to say this is be kind to yourself. This has been generations in the making. We are the proverbial, as I said, frog in the boiling, pot of water. It's really hard to see what's been happening. Do understand that we have been encountering psychological, emotional warfare unlike any scale we have ever seen. And there's a really lovely fireman saying, which is, it's not about how badly you fall, but how well you get back up again.
Yes, I love that. Mm-hmm. And you're so right about we are in the great transition. Yeah. And it's going to be rocky. It's not going to be easy. Bear was just on a stream a couple of days ago with our dear friend, Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, and she said it so perfectly. She said, we are essentially midwifing the new, as it births, and hospicing the old.
That's right.
And I think this has been the greatest gift in that we get to finally get slapped in the face, right? And wake up and see that we've been writing the debt kind of credit for generations that has this kind of fake prosperity all around us. And now we're going to pay the price. And I think that's a genius idea, Reinette, you're saying, is that building an economy around the healing. I haven't heard someone say that before. And that is really, really smart. It's kind of, Bear plays right into permaculture. It plays right into the whole idea of human design around the sacred and around the idea of hospicing the old. I think it's just brilliant. And there's so much we can develop around that community wise,
Yeah, it's sky's the limit. In fact, my campaign team and I, we often you'll hear us talking about wow, isn't this amazing? This campaign, this opportunity, these connections, this was not even available to us 2 years ago. We weren't even thinking this way because the system had not even cracked open to allow us to walk into, this threshold, through this threshold. And so I want to talk about that. People don't know the witch hunt of Europe lasted for 300 years. And local economies throughout all of Europe were based upon the witch hunt. The guillotine maker, the magistrate, right? The bounty hunter, the fire starter, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Local economies were built. And today we have economies, global and local, built upon resource extraction, death, illness. And so I tell people, because I want them to look through this different lens. We measure, and this is where my candidacy is really important. I'm putting forward a blueprint. I'm like, no, I want you to see exactly who I am. I want you to see what I'm going to do for you when I get elected before you ever vote for anybody. That's the least I can do, right? So we want to put that forward right there in the get-go. And most candidates never want to do that, right? They don't, because then you have something to hold their feet to the fire. You have a standard, right? To say, hey, okay. So we're putting that out right away. But then on the other side of the bookend is that we want to change the measurement. Because if you want to change the world, you need to change what it is you're measuring. And what do I mean by that? Right now in America, how do we measure how robust we are and how well we're doing? Well, we measure the GDP, the gross domestic product. Well, okay. So what does that measure? Well, that measures resource extraction. That measures death, illness, car accidents, catastrophic weather events, forest fires, all these things that are not measuring our wellness and how good we're doing. It's measuring who is making how much money. And the more they make, right, the better the GDP is doing. And we're doing great. The GDP is really high. That doesn't measure our wellness. So about 2009, I did this in Nevada City when I was vice mayor, and it actually got tons of pushback. And I was shocked at the time. And now I realize why, because I think there's the powers that be were like, no, don't start doing that. Because I'm like, I want us to measure our wellness. So what I had done is I'd looked at the country of Bhutan, and they have this thing called the happiness index. It's like
the happiest country in the world or whatever.
Right? It's like a 70-page survey that the people of Bhutan have to take every year. And they ask questions like, well, how fat's your ox? And how thick is your wheat shaft? Questions that do not pertain to Americans. But the beautiful thing is we do have a happiness index for Americans, much shorter, not 70 pages. And so this is what I've been saying too. I'm like, look at guys, because I've had people say, well, you have this contract with Californians. What if you don't follow your contract? I'm like, that's a really good question. And I started thinking about like, well, how do I make sure that I follow through my contract? Well, we got to measure, how well am I doing? I'm like, let's bring that happiness index in. Let's fold that thing in, make that part of our, new civic engagement. So what it would be is you have elected officials, they get, candidates, they get elected every single year, and we incentivize it. Give Californians a free latte or an ice cream cone, whatever, that's fine. It's worth it, right? And what you do is you have the wellness, the happiness index for California. It's already been designed. We don't have to figure that out. And we can dial down neighborhood by neighborhood, and we can ask questions like, do you have access to clean water? Do you have access to farmers markets? Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Do you have access to higher education? Do you have the ability to sit down and have a sit-down dinner with your family once or twice a week, right? Do you have time to take a nap, read a book, right? Do you have access to good medical care, right? Do you have, transportation, public transportation? We can ask these questions, and we can see from neighborhood to neighborhood how a community is doing. And if you have an elected official who is failing, let's say on the I feel safe in my neighborhood, it's like, okay, obviously we need to boost up law enforcement, right? Or we need to boost up neighborhood watches, right? Or you have somebody in the inner city saying, I haven't seen a fresh vegetable in 10 years. Okay, we've identified a food desert in the inner cities. You, Mr. Senator, Mr. Assembly member and county rep, you need to work on that. Otherwise, you're not going to get reelected. You're going to get a D. Candidates and elected officials do not want a standard to be measured by. And if you are really there to represent your people, you should be insisting upon it. And if you are not, in my opinion, insisting upon a measurement to measure your leadership and your representation, then please get out of the playing field.
Yeah.
Get out. You don't have a second chance. This is it. It's 2022, June. Love it or leave it. If we do not turn this boat around and do not think that we're going to turn it the next 4 years, Newsom for 4 more years, the rise of homelessness, another 4 years, more smash and grabs, 4 more years of that, shuttering of businesses, muffling our children and making them undergo psychological work, 4 more years. Are we going to vote for 4 more years of that?
Mike,
Reinette,
go ahead, Bear.
Just a quick question. People by the droves are more than ready for your message. And I have no doubt about you winning the election. Mm-hmm. if we can reach people. And that's what we're about here.
Right.
My one concern is the voting machine.
That's everybody.
That was what I was going to
So,
ask.
oh, really? Sorry, Mike.
No, it's great. We're on the same level.
How do we fix that?
Number one question. Okay, so first of all, you need to look for people who've actually identified how to shore up elections. I would suggest you go check out Maricopa County in Arizona. They have a cyber ninjas. The cyber ninjas were involved in identifying and looking at the fraudulent election. And they actually have a report. They have like a 4-page and like a 30-page report, but they have a bullet point of like how you can shore up elections in your area. And this is where I really ask people to get engaged. This is not a silver bullet whatsoever. Every single county is different. Every single, county has a different county clerk, and God only knows if they're actually, abiding by the rule of law or if they're just criminal. I don't know. You have got to engage right now with your county clerk, with your election organizations. I guarantee you there are probably some, like I know Placer County has, they have a transparency and bringing back, the election process once what's it, transparency in elections. You have to find out who is the organization, who are the people, who are the ones who are engaged, get engaged with them. And then this is all about eyes on the street. The more people that are engaged, the more people that are watching from the beginning to the end, the less likely they can screw it over. So if you are watching, go out there and get trained as a poll watcher. If you have a poll station, you need to make sure that you have 24-hour surveillance, like people actually watching with their video cameras, before the polling ever starts and after the polling stops. And we have to really engage ourselves, because if they realize that there's that many people watching them, it's going to be a lot harder to screw it over. But also, more importantly, this is a numbers game. We understand that I could win, right? I could win, but still not win. This is why we need everybody to run at every single level with the same principle, not the party affiliation. That is so yesterday. It is about where are we going from this point on. So we're asking people to run at the board level, the school board level, at the city, at the county, at the state, and the federal level. So we swamp the system. They can't control all those different elections. They can't control, right? That's just too much. You're overloading the system. So that's why it's incumbent upon us to get involved and run at every single level. And if you don't want to run, then you become the poll watcher. You get engaged and you become the ears and the eyes. And also the thing is, we have to remember this. This is really key. So the primary is in June of 2022 upcoming. And people are like, oh my gosh, how are you going to run against Newsom? He's got this war chest, 80 million, he's going to have $100 million. And I go, first of all, people are kind of sick and tired of the war chest, and they're tired of the big money in the elections. So it speaks volumes, but it doesn't bode well for him. But strategically speaking, I'm not running against Newsom. I'm going to consider he's a shoo-in for the primary in June. I'm just going to consider he's going to make it to the general in November. So I'm not running against him. I'm running against all the other candidates, right? That's who I'm running against. And if I get elected in the June primary, right, then people be going, well, no, who is this person? Who is this Reinette Senum? What does she stand for? And how did she make it into the primaries? And then they can start doing their own. And then that gives us a little bit more time, right, to shore up our elections. And this requires, Bear, this requires extraordinary engagement on every level. And people have to understand that if we do not take back this state this coming year, we don't have a planet for the 7 generations. It's gone.
Yeah. And I guess we have in our community, we have a lot of cynical people now that have given up on the idea that there can be any sort of leadership or governance besides straight anarchy. And anarchy, as we've said over and over again, is not, chaos. It is self-governance. And we do have some people in the chat saying, I thought, we're not going to follow you guys anymore. We thought you were about self-governance, and you're literally talking about self-governance at the top of the hour here. What do you see in your vision? Because we have like the Youngkin, right, who was elected in Virginia. The next day turns around and changes everything he promised. And we know this is the cycle of democracies, is that you have these sophists, is the word I'm looking for, that tell you all this wonderful stuff. And then the people believe, the people put their vote in, if the voting is actually legit. They get elected, and then the next day, the corporations, everyone put the pressure on them. First day in the office, everything gets changed. And you're talking about this contract. So what is a methodology? Because I personally believe we need leadership. I think humans thrive on leadership. We always have historically. Look at all the great revolutions. Look at all the great things that happened in our history. They're from great, beautiful individuals that lead us, inspire us, right? So I believe society requires leadership. But how do we hold, even you accountable when we go through this whole process and get you in office? And then do you have any strategies for taking on these massive corporations who essentially run our governments now?
Well, again, that's why we need people to run. This is not, you've got one elected official, that's the governor, but you got all the legislators. Now, granted, I know it's a two-pronged approach here. Granted, it is the job of the governor when these bills are on his desk. It is his job. That's where the buck stops. He is the firewall of protection from your legislators to the people. And if he sees a bill land on his desk that is not constitutional, he should veto it. First of all, that's what he's not doing that. He's not, and that's how you ensure the rule of law. That's not happening. The legislators are creating bills that are absolutely unconstitutional, do not ensure the rule of law, and then the governor is doing the same thing first. Okay, that's that. The other important component is this. You got to look at a person's track record. I've been a city council member 2 terms, was voted for a 3rd, and city council, and a mayor and vice mayor. I put about 2,000 hours in this committee, and it's all volunteer. As mayor and even as vice mayor and council member, I've never been paid a penny. We don't get paid. It's all volunteer. I have to go out there and work in order to have the luxury, right, to vote at the table. And when you look at my track record, you'll Google me and you're like, who is this person? Because you'll see me all over the place, right? Because I'll wear whatever hat I need to wear to get the job done. But I've always been about the people. I've always been about community. I've always been about local leadership. I've always been about, starting, really decentralizing, our economy. I mean, and I'll give you some examples. And I don't know anybody who has a track record like mine. I actually do not know anybody who has a track record like mine. So it's, even before I got elected to city council originally, I got the city to get solar in all the municipally owned buildings, right? Then I started the first organic farmers market in Nevada County in 2008. Then I started the first extreme weather shelter for the homeless. Then I had 100 people, volunteers in 2 days, build a fleet of 40 micro houses on wheels that had rickshaw handles that I literally wheeled out into the woods for the homeless, right? And then I also started a time bank. What is a time bank? A time bank is where you keep an accounting on kindness, and it turns it into an international currency. Let's talk. That's another topic, right? You can make currency whatever you want. You can choose it. It could be kindness. So my point is this: I have a track record that is highly unusual of any elected official out there. Because my whole thing was, I want to change the world to make it better, and I'm going to start with my own community. I'm going to start in my backyard. The other thing is, my other track record, which is maybe highly controversial, is I call out corruption. I call it corruption with Pacific Gas and Electric, with their PSPS events that are devastating our businesses. I call it corruption with AT&T and Verizon when they're coming in here, trying to put antennas illegally and unnecessarily. I call out corruption with law enforcement, which made people just go ballistic. And I wasn't calling out law enforcement as a whole, but just the bad apples. I call out corruption everywhere I go, which makes you loved and makes you hated. But on top of that, because your question is so important, that is one reason why my team's like, Reinette, you've got to write your book. People have got to understand your story, because I have a trajectory that's been going on for several generations. This story that most of your listeners don't know, unless they saw an earlier podcast with us, there's a legacy that I'm tending to. And it has a certain trajectory and a certain responsibility that I take very seriously. And once you hear that story, you will better understand who I am and who I'm really serving. And it is not the big money. And I have had a beautiful life. I've had such a beautiful life that this nation and this Constitution has afforded me. And I want to ensure the generations that follow have the same opportunity. And I'm willing to die for this. And I'm gutsy. I'm fearless. And that's why people have you running like, we need you. And so it's up to me. It's incumbent upon me to put that story out there, to put that information out there, and to put the book out there, so you actually better understand why I'm doing what I am doing.
So Reinette, this is a tricky topic here, because it's really going to get to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
In every state, county, and municipality, there are 2 entities. There's a corporate entity. Let's just take California. There's a state of, which is your clue that it is a private corporation. And then we have the republic.
That's right.
Now, I believe under proper leadership, if the people would simultaneously reinstate the republic and mind their own store, we could have that corporate entity, the state of, that could operate in a cooperative manner. So it's not just like the ship mowing over the people. And so do you see how the two could exist side by side? And, just a couple more thoughts. For instance, in the state of, we have a judiciary system, which is run by Uniform Commercial Code, not by the Article 3 Constitution mandated courts. So how do we juggle that where we get the private corporate interest out of our affairs and maybe let the corporate state of California actually serve the people and allow us to simultaneously have our republic back and keep those jurisdictions separate so that the state of is not running roughshod over our constitutional rights, because the Constitution has nothing to do in the corporation if we are citizens of the corporation. So,
I think the best
deep subject.
Yeah, it's a big subject and I'm very familiar with it. And I've had people saying, why are you running for governor in that system when there's this system? I'm like, well, because, that's the system we're currently operating in and functioning. And it's going to take time for us to just, kind of remove ourselves from each other. But I think what's really, really important at this point in time, Bear, is to educate people. And I do believe people are learning more and more about this all the time, but this has been this has been generations in the making. And our education system, our historical knowledge is not, we have been living in a sea of lies for a long, long time. And the wool has been pulled over our eyes. And again, I feel like there's a great reckoning happening right now. And people are really starting to look deeply and realize that we've been fooled. And again, nobody is to be blamed. It's just, it's generational. But I think what's really key at this point in time is to really, really educate people about their true history. Because what we've been taught and what we see in books and in documentaries is nowhere near accurate. And so first and foremost, it's a massive, massive education campaign. So people understand, how did we get here? How did we get here? And that has been also, to let you know, a very personal experience, because I was adopted. And part of that little book we were talking about is, as an adopted woman, I was like 2 months old when I was adopted. But as I was growing older and older, I was like, just where am I in this narrative? Like, like what's my logistics here? Like, where do I stand in this story? And I want to know, how did I get here? Where did I come from? So then I can better sense, like, where do I need to go? Right now, Californians, Americans really don't understand how we got here. So really uncovering the story, the real story of what happened, right? The powers that be that fooled us and switched over from corporate to this, to state up, to your birth certificate, to blah, 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 blah. We need to understand how we got here. And once we understand that, then we can figure out, how do we get out of here? So really, first and foremost, it's not a matter of, well, we're going to go out there and we're going to, it's like, no. First and foremost, we're going to actually educate Californians and Americans to actually how we got here. The real historical knowledge that's been hidden from us for generations and generations. And that's what's been, that's my own personal stories. Like, I've been asking on a personal level, how did I get here as a human being? Who came before me? So I can better understand, like, who's going to go ahead of me, later on, and how can I assist them? So it's and I think people are really, really waking up to that. And it is a rabbit hole for sure. It is a rabbit hole, but we've got to educate even a larger mass of people to understand this. So then we can actually move the dial. We have to move the dial, but we need more people to understand what you're talking about.
And what's brilliant about this conversation, it's the only one that I've ever heard where somebody actually running for office is willing to even talk about that, let alone acknowledge that it's real.
Yeah, I watched the recall very carefully, like a lot of people. And I have to say, and I said to people, like, if somebody wants to run and they've got a great campaign and they've got a great platform, I'll campaign for them. I won't run, I'll campaign and I'll support and I'll vote for them. But I didn't see that, Bear. I didn't. I saw people playing it safe. I saw candidates being, politicking essentially, and keeping their cards close to their chest and not willing to go out there on a limb and actually take a risk and push that envelope back as we need to do. And I was so, I guess, not surprised, but disappointed that in light of all of the challenges that we're facing, that we did not have somebody really strong and say, "Nuh-uh, I am 100% for bodily autonomy. I am 100% for smaller government and removing the overreach of government, right? I am 100%, there was none of that. There's like, well, yeah, those days are over, and I'm willing to make a strong stand. And also, if I find myself being wrong, I'm willing to say, okay, I'm wrong, and I will, adjust myself accordingly, because I'm very much a student and a teacher, and I am learning as I go. But I know I don't know everything, and there's going to be people who are going to come along and they're going to teach me. I'll go, oh gosh, I didn't realize that. And that's what you're talking about. What you're talking about, I too have been uncovering over the years, going, oh my Lord, I had no idea. That's how we got here. And so that needs to be dealt with. And I think first and foremost, that starts with education.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And that's been another gift of this whole debacle, is that people are pulling their kids out of school and realizing how amazing homeschooling is. Before the show, I was telling you I got to go run and get one of my kids on assignment, and now we've been talking about unschooling as well, and having your kids kind of in a village of peers and adults that are helping with their education. And it's not indoctrination, it's education. So there's just so many wonderful things coming out. We'll be talking about that in the summit this week. Unschooling and homeschooling is a huge part. Back to the decentralization question, Reinette. So here's what we're up against in California. We've got really awake people in the rural counties, they call the red counties. And then we've got these hot pockets of uneducated, kind of lost folks in the cities that we know what, a big problem with democracies is they give out, they dole out all these wonderful free, things to people who vote them in because they get all these services. And we know that corruption lies in that. And then they get more votes because they say, we'll give you this free, this free, this free. And we know that are really concentrated in the cities. And so we have Los Angeles, we have San Francisco, we have these hot pockets of this that really run our state. How do we decentralize that? How do we get into that? Because we really need, I guess, people running for mayor and people getting into those places because until those places are flipped, if you will, I just don't see California, unless we have a fracturing, like we have the New California movement, where that strategy is like, let's just leave them to figure it out on their own and wither away. But I believe those places can evolve and change. It's just going to take an insane amount of work. I mean, what's the strategy there? Because to me, those are barren wastelands. I don't even like to go visit anymore.
Yeah. There's a gentleman, Jeff Weitzman. Do you guys know him?
Yes.
Yeah. So he and I last week went into a whole bunch of different businesses and stores in Santa Monica and West Hollywood. He's posting them on his Instagram account. They're getting tens of thousands.
We're featuring his film, I think, during the summit.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we went into the Santa Monica Co-op. That one's not even up on his Instagram yet. And it was surreal. It was like a bad Hollywood B movie. The indoctrination so heavy. So years ago, I had somebody ask me, and it can apply to today. Somebody asked me when I was starting resiliency and sustainability in Nevada City, Nevada County, and I don't mean the United Nations version. I mean the decentralized small mom and pop version. There's a very big difference. And someone said, Reinette, how are you going to convince everyone to go sustainable? And I said, wow. I said, I'm not going to convince everyone to go sustainable, but we have to be ready when we have no other option but to go sustainable. We have to have the networks and the connections in place and the know-how. So with this, how are we going to convince the people in the cities? How are we going to convince the ones who are going along with this whole entire narrative? We're not going to convince them. We're just not. And this is the sad state of the matter. From the different respective experts that I've interviewed over the last year and a half, and we are already seeing it, we're going to have a lot of carnage. We're going to continue to have a lot of people dying. And when it's the children that start to die, which they already are, in fact, Professor Dolores Cahill on a Zoom call, was on a private Zoom call just a few days ago, according to VAERS, Open VAERS, when you look at those who received the jab, within the first 48 hours, 1 out of 50 people die. You're not hearing about that. and they cover it up for this or that. It's like, okay, you can cover it up with adults, but once the children and the teenagers get to a certain level, and that's where the personal experience is, when people in their neighborhoods, their schools, right, their families, all of a sudden the children, aren't functioning like they were, or they're dying, or they're dropping dead, heart attacks, right? So I go back to, we are not going to convince them. But when they realize what has happened, there's going to be a massive reckoning within themselves. We could definitely be dealing with a large uptick in suicides. And we have to be ready to bring them into the fold, to say, forgive yourself, don't be hard on yourself, and let's just start moving ahead together, right, in this direction. We have got to be ready for them. We're not going to convince them. It's got to be a personal experience that is so jarring, that destroys the narrative that they've been sold, that they have to sit there and actually deal and sit within the reality that they've created for themselves. And we have to be on the sidelines, ready when they're
You're going to make me cry right now. I'm feeling for these people, but because I'm seeing this now, and in a way that's so profound, and it's a great opportunity because there'll be economic aspects to this, of course, as we embrace these people, but we're, waiting for them to embrace them. And wow, I think that's why the system's running so fast to shadow ban. And this is probably a good segue into it. Shadow ban and censor all the information like we talk about the health side of things, which is our platform. And, and as Bear and I know, most people that come to us new to our community, they awaken because of some profound personal decline in health, right, Bear, or something that a family member goes through, whether it be cancer or something where there's some toxic poisoning from a vaccine, and then they wake up. And so we are going to see that on such a massive scale that the powers that shouldn't be are doing everything that they can right now to centralize, to control, to get us in a virtual reality where we're not even in touch with ourselves anymore, with our body, where it's heavy. It's really heavy, but I love that.
And
ready for them.
Just on a quick personal anecdote, during my career, I took care of a good number of vaccine damaged kids. And when their parents came in, they were devastated. And of course, they were just gaslighted. And even though their perfectly normal child was fine 24, 48 hours prior, and now completely retarded, there is such, it's just beyond a reckoning. They're destroyed, crushed. And it's heartbreaking. And just taking those individual cases that, I oversaw, I can't even imagine that on a massive scale and what it's going to do to the psyche of our entire society. And it's already happening. It's not okay when it happens. It's already happening. Right. A lot of the analytics, of course, are being hidden. So it's much worse already than people understand. And understanding also the statistics of vaccines that I've had to deal with in the past. You can do, there's a certain incubation period within our biology. And then you can see that population that had it. And then after that incubation, you just see this tremendous spike in whatever that particular procedure was responsible for. And we're seeing some of the early casualties, but now we're going to start seeing some spikes. And we do have to be ready for that. So just a comment, I've been there and I see what's coming.
And you're right. And we know, because we've been seeing it like with the soccer players over in Europe, they're just dropping on the field. They have, people in the stands dropping. I mean, there'd be like 3 interruptions where they'd bring in the ambulance, drivers and the medics and defibrillate them right there live. It's happening. And once that starts happening here in January, February, it's going to be a shocker to people, and it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be a high number. And you're right. There is like this kind of like plateau where, and it kind of, I equate it with like just watching the ocean pull out, right? Just watching it pull, and you're just like, oh boy. And then you're just waiting for that crash. And so we're going to see that. And so again, I go back to, we can't convince people, we can only be ready for them. And yes, the healing. Oh, just imagine the children when they start to see their playmates and their friends dying, and they're going to turn to their parents and say, Mom, Dad, Am I going to die? Because the same thing happened to me. I've been injected. The psychological, it's really hard to grapple with, but I go back to, this is what real leadership is. You've got to take that risk. You've got to take that threat, and you've got to transmute it into the best opportunity, which I go back to is we have no choice but to base our economy upon healing everything. And we will build back. And it's going to be our version of Build Back Better. And it will be based upon healing. And this is never going to happen again. Never going to happen again, because we are changing the nature of the game. They have been playing on a monopoly board. There's a reason why they taught us how to play Monopoly at a young age, right? They were indoctrinating us at a young, that is their board game. That is their rules. And we are starting our own board game with our own set of rules, and we're never going back. This is the end. This is the death of this system. But we've got to be there and be ready for the great change.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And decentralization, I was just going to say, Bear, people keep in the chat asking, well, what's she going to do this? What's she going to do that? I'm like, guys, get off your armchair. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And that's the power of decentralization. It's like, yes, we need leadership. We need inspiration. We need people getting in there and cleaning up Sacramento, of course. And we need legislators getting in elected, and that bottom up approach, right? That's starting at the local and moving up. However, in the end, decentralization is much more than that. It's on all aspects of our lives. And it requires everyone to grow the hell up. Everyone to get out of the chair, get in, activate in your community, figure out how you could start growing some food, figure out how you can start supporting channels like this that are bringing alternative media. And then it's not about what's Reinette going to do, right? It's about what you're going to do for yourself.
Right. If you're asking me, and you're only asking me, what is she going to do? What are you going to do? That's the crux of the matter right there. You should be asking, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to involve myself? Right? That is key. And this is kind of how we got into this pickle in the first place, that we handed over the steering wheel to a few people with a lot of money, and we just let them drive this car off a cliff. And here we are trying to build the parachute real fast as we're midair. And so, no, and that's been my whole entire thing. As I say to people, like, please don't fool yourselves. This is not a one-person job. Yes, as governor, I can do a lot of different things, but this is a huge Herculean lift. We need all hands on deck. We need everybody to get involved, whether it's the election process and transparency, or actually voting, or just thinking differently as a 7th-generation principal, or being the messenger. I'm going to go right back to, again, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to implore you to go out there and call every Californian friend, relative you have, text them, email them, call them and say, do you know about this Reinette Senum? Have you electreinette.com? Have you seen? Because you're not going to hear about her. And if you do, it's going to be twisted. That's where you start your activation, and to ensure that we have the world that the 7th generation deserves. It's not going to be just me. And if you have anybody out there saying, oh, I'm going to be the leader, I'm going to be the savior, they're pulling the wool over your eyes. Those days are over. And and I'm going to say something else. Somebody was talking to me, is really interesting. She actually went to an event where it was one of Martin Luther King's speechwriters from decades ago. And this was just like a year ago. And this speechwriter had said, I can only imagine being the speechwriter of Martin Luther King, right? But she said she realized the mistake they had made with putting all of their eggs into the Martin Luther King basket. Because when he was assassinated, the movement died with him. And in the current construct that we live in, this system does not allow the great leaders to rise. It doesn't. It either eviscerates them, character assassination like we're seeing with Bobby Kennedy Jr. This man is laying his life on the line for us. And they eviscerate the character, they disinform the public about who this person really is, or they just out and out just take him out. So I'm going to go back to, we have got to monkey wrench this system. And as much as, yes, we do need some leaders, we need leaders within every single one of our community. This is a numbers game. We need thousands, we need millions of different leaders in every single one of their communities, but heading towards the same shore. That's it. And so if we're going to think there's going to be another MLK or another, JFK, those days are over. The system won't let those people rise. That's why we need numbers. That's why we need the individuals. And I'm talking to you on the chat right now saying, well, what is she going to do for us? If you think I'm going to do it for you, you're sorely mistaken. I'll do what I can, but you've got to get involved. You've got to get engaged. And if your life is not worth it, then you've sent the message to the seventh generation. Their lives mean nothing too. Is that okay with you? It's on your watch. It's not okay with me.
Yeah, I'm going real quick, Bear. This is a great analogy. For my 10-year-old, we're studying the Revolutionary War right now, and we're talking about loyalists versus patriots and what that means. And literally, now's the time. Are you a patriot? Are you standing up every day with every thought in your life, doing things that are patriotic? And when I say patriotic, I mean for your life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for you, your family, your friends, and your loved ones every day. Or are you a loyalist? And now, what a loyalist means is: are you buying from Amazon? Are you watching still mainstream media? Are you believing that in the scare tactics of whatever they're telling you? That is the war we're in right now. And so it's time for us all patriots is the new definition of patriotism, which is self-governance in terms of every thought in our life. What are we doing to essentially be more decentralized, right? And be more sovereign in every decision we make.
And real briefly, I talked to the Tea Party Patriots started here in Nevada City, actually.
I'm sorry, you broke up there, Reinette. Did you say Tea Party?
Tea Party Patriots started here in Nevada City, actually. A lot of people don't know that. And I was talking to one of the father of the Tea Party Patriot, Mark Meckler, his dad, Stan. And this is back in 2009. And we totally came, here's this progressive, lesbian, liberal, and we sat down, and I asked him, I said, what are you worried about? What's your biggest concern? He goes, I'm worried for my grandchildren. I said, well, I'm worried for them too. This was back in 2009. We completely came together. We wrote an op-ed, a column together. People just loved this column. And interestingly enough, that's when I really started to see things shift and kind of having infiltrators and things being twisted. I think that was too dangerous, the two of us coming together. And but it was around the children. But I said, look, Stan, to tell you something. I said, I believe in less government, right? I do actually believe in the Second Amendment. I have been in places like South Africa during the height of their apartheid in 86, 87. I was there as a 20-year-old. I've been in Uganda after the Civil War, and I saw, the bullet holes were fresh in the buildings, and the tanks were still on the side of the roads, and people still had lost parts of their limbs, their lips, and their ears. It was horrific. And they could not protect themselves because they did not have the Second Amendment. They could not bear arms. So I was very different in that I'm this more progressive kind of person, but I believe in smaller government, and I believe in the Second Amendment from my personal experiences, which I base everything upon for the most part. And so I said to him, look it. I said, if you really want the Tea Party to grow, and if you really want us to kind of come full circle and join forces, we need to have a common goal. And I actually at that time did not know about the 7-generation principle and the Iroquois Confederacy so much so. But if you guys could actually fold into what you're doing about, resource conservation, clean water, clean soil, right? Healthy food. If you could do that, then we could actually meet you. Because my whole thing is that the only reason why we have such big government is because they have to have the red tape and the legislation and the policies and the fines and the fees and the licenses, or, in order to meet this standard of, economic wellness or, environmental wellness. And I'm like, well, how about just have a common standard goal, which is the 7-generation principle. If we all have this common goal, we don't need the government to intervene. We don't need their red tape. We don't need their overbearing reach. We don't need that. We just imbue that within our lives. We just make sure that we always make those decisions according to that standard, to that goal. And that is a game changer. Right now, we have the left looking to the government saying, hey, we want you to set all these economic standards and goals. And really, all you're doing is putting more money in people's pockets, because we're still destroying our environment. Our environment has been slipping backwards for a long time. And so the thing is, like, why don't we put the power back into the people? And we ensure, as the people, we take care of the pollinators, we take care of the legacy farms, we take care of the water, we make sure it's distributed intelligently, we take care of the soil, right? We take care of the mom and pop businesses and, manufacturers. So we don't need the government to butt into our business. But I go back to, what's the common goal? The common goal should be the 7-generation principle. And what was happening is we've handed over our leadership, and we've handed over these high standards to our government, and they're not setting the bar. They're just taking advantage of us and abusing it.
Reinette, I was just going to say a lot of us are already there.
Yeah.
What we're doing here is we're exactly what you're saying. And all we need is somebody at that government level that's going to leave us alone, because we have the solutions. We're building a prototype here. We work with people in our life that are all on board. I don't know about the few people in the chat that are saying what she can do about this, that, but that's not the way we think. I think that's really a dying breed, because too many of us have figured out that that doesn't work. So,
well, and I think it's,
everything you're saying,
a person at the top,
please.
you know, making sure they have the right policies in place, they appoint the right people in certain agencies for sure. They make sure when the bills are passing over their desk, you know, that they actually make sure that they're constitutional and they apply the rule of law. And the other thing is, I think it's really important that we actually have a governor that also puts into place a measurement of our elected representatives, right? That we need to be able to measure them something by. And once you do that, that's a game changer, because you'll find out really fast whether or not, you know, that candidate that you just elected is actually going to follow through. And if not, you can recall them, and you've got hard data to base your recall on, or you make sure you just don't elect them for a second term.
Yeah, we need better terms and conditions for sure. And then to be able to retract when those terms and conditions aren't met. We also need something that says like a limit on bills and laws, because we know like it's California under Newsom, how many laws a year? It's insane.
Well, especially now, you guys, I have to tell you, this is why I say all hands on deck. Do not make it incumbent upon one person running for governor. But right now, if you could see the bills that they're shoving through, and let me tell you, I was last summer and fall, I was in the halls of the Capitol, and I was testifying against bills around 5G, because they're just ready to slather the state with millimeter wave, which is not a good idea. It has nothing to do with fast downloads.
And we've got Tesla in LA and stuff putting out the low orbiting satellites that are going to be blanketing the whole sky.
And again, the 7th generation principle, you have to know, precautionary principle, is this, doing more harm than good? But ultimately, I was in the halls of our Capitol, and let me tell you, they were empty. Nobody was there. Nobody was testifying. Nobody was in the chambers. It was like empty. It was surreal. It felt apocalyptic. And that's what they want. They have everyone at home, concerned only being on the screen. We've all resorted, the most radical thing you could do is have a face-to-face connection and talk to someone face-to-face without a screen. That's usurping the data, the information, and using it against you. And the face-to-face connection is the most important. And people are now just relegated to their homes and being on the screens, and that's become the norm. It's like, no, get back into the halls of your Capitol, start pushing against those bills. So while I was there, there's every 2 minutes, another bill, another bill, another bill, another bill, and nobody talking, nobody pushing back, nobody questioning, pass.
Well, SB 276 and 77 was so demoralizing because there was so many people going to Sacramento, going into those chambers, screaming and yelling at their representatives as they literally passed forced vaccination upon all kids. And it was so demoralizing. I think people after that, and then the quote unquote pandemic hit, it's been a tough one in California.
And again, this is all the art of war. This is by design. You destroy the spirit of people without ever shooting, firing a shot. And war is disinformation. Disinformation is war. This is a disinformation war. And so they've been subjugating to this and trying to break our spirit for a long, long time. But I have to say, guys, we have to take some responsibility for this.
We need someone to get in there and get into Dick Pan's area and get him out of there. And I mean, this is the thing. We need other people like you, Reinette, standing up in their areas in California, in their districts, and running, because
bills that make sense, that restore the rule of law, that ensure they're constitutional. You can't make it all incumbent upon one person. The reason why that, thousands of people showed up. I remember that. I was actually fighting 5G while they were fighting the 276, 277, because I was like, you guys got that covered. You got thousands, there's only a few people fighting this, and it's also about health, and it's really dangerous. So I kind of let my people, my friends, and my peers fight that, but I was watching it closely, updated every day. But the reason why we weren't represented is because we don't run for those positions. We don't run. We've given over. We've given it over to them, and they are not loyal to us. They're loyal to the dollars. They're loyal to the lobbyists. They're loyal to the big corporations, right? And so as long as we continue to allow them to represent us, were never going to be represented. It happened because it happened on our watch. We thought
So
it was someone else's.
Absolutely.
what you're saying is we need to represent ourselves.
Yeah, this is not a one-person job. This is all hands on deck.
So Barry, you're going to run, right? You're going to run for Del Norte supervisor.
Actually,
that's the rumor.
Oh God, I'm gonna be shamed now. I've been resisting it, and I did have some pressure locally here to run for the council. Oh God, that would be horrendous.
Imagine if you ran, and again, whatever political affiliation or none whatsoever, ours is nonpartisan at the city council level, but imagine if you ran on that 7th-generation principle, right?
Yeah.
And then we formed an alliance where we would come together and have conferences and task force, and we can identify the weaknesses in the system and where we can strengthen and shore them up, and how we can. I mean, imagine what we could do. Imagine.
Yeah. In this little area here, Crescent City, which is to the west of us, we know a lot of people, so we get the firsthand stories. Is the corruption is off the hook, running cover for all the people that are, polluting everything. So anyway, I
have one question.
Can you tell us about your
Bear? Before we go into the book, I do have one important question, and this is something, Bear, what you say is if you do your job as a doctor, and if in the future we won't need doctors, right? Do you believe, Reinette, if you do your job as a politician, we won't need politicians? Because still we got people in the chat going, we don't need politicians. And I agree. I don't think we do need politicians. I think we need limited terms.
We need statesmen, not politicians.
Yes, thank you.
I would
beat me to it, Bear.
I would actually, I would agree with that 100%. But you have to have somebody in that position who understands that and doesn't push back and fight against it, but actually supports it and says, okay, let's look at it. Because again, I'm just about what's the betterment for society? How do we best serve the 7th generation? And this current construct of a political system is not serving the 7 generations. It's not even serving the generation of today. So the children of today. So no, I agree with that. But you have to have somebody who has the guts to go in there and say, you know what, we can do better. And right now we don't, that just doesn't exist. So, and you had a question. Do you have a question, Bear? Were you going to ask something as well?
I wanted to hear about your book because I think it's pretty germane to everything we're talking about here, right?
Yeah. So the book, so basically in a nutshell, and this is why I'm running, and this pertains to my leadership, my sense of leadership, is back in 1994, after starting to look for my natural family. I was adopted when I was 11. I started to look for them. Couldn't find them. So now I'm in mid-20s, and I thought, well, I'll never find them. They kind of disappeared. And I thought, well, if you aren't going to find your family, you have to go out there and push yourself and see what you're made of. And I had been part of a South Pole expedition. I could not join in. I had to raise $70,000. So they went without me to the South Pole. And then I organized my own American Women's Trans-Antarctic Expedition. And they said, well, Reinette, we've been doing this stuff for 15, 20 years. And they kicked me off the team and went to the South Pole without me. And I thought, finally, well, just go cross something by yourself without corporate sponsorship or team members. And I decided to cross Alaska alone. So in a nutshell, I skied down the frozen Yukon River, it got to 55 below. I had 2 dogs that was going to help me pull my sled that was harnessed to my waist. And about 5 days before I was to leave, the fellow who's lending me the dogs, he's an Iditarod sled dog racer, said, I don't think you're going to make it. I think you're going to die. And he took the dogs away. So I started pulling the sled by myself without the dogs for 200 miles. And then I got a dog along the way. And then halfway across the state, skiing down the frozen Yukon River, ahead of schedule, the river began to thaw below my feet. Was not planning this at all. So I stayed in this Athabasca native village called Stevens Village. And while I was there, the way the beauty of life would work, well, I'm trying to think, how am I going to continue? I have no options. I don't know what to do. My only road is melting below my feet. And I realized I can give up or find a different way to continue. At that time, as I'm going in and out my little cabin in this village, a snowbank begins to melt, and I unbury the last canoe built in this village 20 years before. So then I cut down 3 trees. I was left tools. I built my own 18-foot long canoe in 3.5 weeks. And I paddled 900 miles in 11 days. And it's flat water, very little current. I averaged paddling 75 miles a day. And so it took me 4 months, 6 days. I did cover this for National Geographic. I filmed it for them. So that's where the adventure really begins. I do this trip, and then 2 years later, I did this when I was 27, 28. And then now I'm 30, and I say, okay, this is the year I'm going to find my family. And sure enough, I do find them. I have an amazing researcher who finds them. She deserved a medal. And I found out my real name was Marcella Funston. I had been told my adoptive mother, my name was Marcella Anderson. So I was looking for the Andersons forever. And then I found out that my natural mother, died around the time when I started looking for her. So when I was about 12, she died at 35 of breast cancer. But I found my natural half brother, and he told me this really wild story of a great grandfather of ours named General Frederick Funston. And my brother said to me, well, now, when you crossed Alaska, that was after you found out our great grandfather did that. And I was like, no, you're confused. He's like, no. There's a Smithsonian May 89 edition that talks about his life and his trip across Alaska. And I was right by UCLA. This was in like 90, when was this? 96, 95, 96. And I rushed right up to, no, actually, this was 96. I rushed right up to UCLA library, and in a half hour, my whole life was turned upside down. I got the Smithsonian magazine. I found out my great grandfather, General Frederick Funston, who at the time of his death in 1917, was the highest ranked military official in the country. He had Patton, Pershing, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and MacArthur under his command, and was overseeing Pershing as he had him pursue Pancho Villa along the Mexican-American border. So he's a little tiny guy, 5'4", barely 100 pounds, most famous military figure you never heard of. And sure enough, I found out my great grandfather had been hired by the USDA to collect botanical samples up in Alaska. So his trip was 2 years long. He did not have the luxury of an airplane like I did. So he had the Tlingit indigenous people take him to the Yukon, the headwaters of the Yukon. He started his trip on April 10th, and I'm reading this in the Smithsonian magazine. He happened to start his trip on April 10th, which I thought, oh, that's so funny, that's my birthday. And then I found out he traveled 1,500 miles down the Yukon River, and I traveled 1,500 miles down the Yukon River. And then along the way, as he was snowshoeing down the Yukon River and I was skiing down the Yukon River, he shot and killed a sled dog to eat because he was starving. And I thought, that's fascinating, because I actually saved a sled dog from being shot and killed, and used him as my companion to help me pull my sled. And then my great grandfather with two buddies cut down 3 trees and built an 18-foot long canoe. And I cut down 3 trees and I built an 18-foot long canoe. And then my great grandfather paddled down the rest of the Yukon River, and just towards, in the headwaters, right, of the Bering Sea, he flipped his canoe, lost a lot of his botanical samples and photos, not all, but a lot. And of course, when I built my canoe, I put little stabilizers on them, which saved me on a couple different occasions, as a matter of fact. He did this trip in 1894, and I did my trip in 1994. And he was 27, and he turned 28 along the way. And I was 27, and I turned 28 along the way. And at the time I did my trip, I didn't even know my real name. I didn't know any of my story. So what did this do? This caused me to stop. I realized this was mathematically impossible. All of these coincidences, mathematically, there was something more. And I began to delve into who General Frederick Funston was. And if you're ever in San Francisco, there's a Fort Funston, a Funston Avenue. In Kansas, where the Spanish flu started originally, there's a Camp Funston. And I'm going to share one particular story that's most important, because when I talk about legacy, I take it seriously. My great grandfather was well known in San Francisco during the 1906 earthquake. He was second in command at the Presidio, first in command, actually left the night before, went off to a wedding on a train ride to the East Coast. The next morning, my great grandfather was shaken out of bed. He ran up to the top of Nob Hill and turned around and watched the whole entire city burning down in a big inferno. And he ran back down to his home. His wife handed him a cup of coffee, and he turned to her and he said, "Pack the belongings into the trunk. The house will be burning down today." And it burned down 5 hours later. And he continued to declare martial law, called in the soldiers. Within 48 hours, had every blanket and tent west of the Mississippi, and had little tiny villages and camps set up for everybody who found themselves without a home and a roof. And then he, after declaring martial law, he realized that the whole entire city was going to burn down. And though this was a controversial act, I've actually looked into it myself greatly. He dynamited a huge fire break along Van Ness Boulevard. I have been told that he used the wrong kind of dynamite. I'm sure he used whatever kind of dynamite he could get his hands on at the time. But when I look at the maps, what he blew up, and he blew up all these beautiful homes to create a fire break. The fire continued on the flanks, but it did stop along Van Ness. He did stop a huge portion of the city. So I do have to say, those who say he made a mistake and made matters worse, I do respectfully disagree. And later on, these homeowners, after blowing up their homes, tried to sue him and the US Army for blowing up the homes, and they lost. And out of it came a ruling known as eminent domain. I have spent my life on many occasions fighting against the overreach and the weaponization of eminent domain. And even just barely over a year ago, 3 blocks away, I was sitting in a tree and sleeping in a cemetery, trying to stop PG&E from coming in and unnecessarily cutting down some of our heritage trees just to kind of flex their muscle. And what was I fighting against? Eminent domain. And I couldn't help but think to myself, wow, This is what legacy is. This is it. And I realized that proverbial little story of like, you throw a stone into a pond and the pebble rips out. Well, we are actually more the ripple than we are the pond, the stone, I should say. So my great grandfather existed for 52 years. And yet his actions are still impacting us to this day. And here I am, his great granddaughter, and I'm face to face confronting his actions, right? This is legacy. And so then I thought to myself, well, he didn't know that eminent domain was going to be weaponized and was going to be used against the people. But I thought, well, but when you look at who he was and the spirit of him, he was into the white man's burden. He believed in American imperialism. In fact, this man was on the presidential ticket with Roosevelt as the vice president. And he was going around the country stumping about American imperialism. We're going to take over the planet. This is great. And they kept saying, hey, quiet down. Stop saying that. Or we're going to take you off the ticket. Well, he wouldn't shut up and they removed him from the ticket. But he was all about, right? He was all about colonializing the planet and taking it over. And he believed that it was his duty and the best thing. So when I look at the spirit of this man and the spirit of eminent domain, I'm like, well, of course it would continue that way. It is the spirit of his actions of who he was. And so when I think about who I am, how I show up, what's important to me, how I go about my day, I'm always thinking about what is going to be left behind in my wake? What is going to be in my trail and in my path and I've left behind and what are people going to have to deal with? My whole entire leadership is based upon that. This whole entire campaign is based upon that. I want to make sure that whatever legacy I leave behind, that it supports life, it supports the rule of law, and it ensures that those who are not yet born have what I have, the opportunities, plus some.
Wow, what a brilliant illustration of everything you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's so nice that type of awareness is actually coming back onto our screens. And, we had the memory keepers through indigenous cultures, and just like in the Hopi prophecy that many of them would reincarnate into, the rainbow tribe. And so here we are. And we're coming full circle, and it's a wonderful time. What's the title of your book?
Don't have it yet. I have lots of different, lots of different. I did a GoFundMe back in 2015. It was called, they call me Fruitcake, because when I was building the canoe, the Athabaskan, like, we're going to call you Fruitcake if you build this canoe. And it was very funny. And so, but that was also a big lesson in my humanity. When I built that canoe, I got to see how our humanity works. It was a beautiful, lifelong lesson for me, but don't know. We'll figure that out. But I've got a lot of work to do over this holiday, and I'll definitely do it. But we do realize it's very important for people to understand my story. As you were saying, Mike, how are people going to think you're any different than anyone else? Like, well, you got to hear the story. You have to understand that this is actually this story, this gubernatorial campaign, I believe, is generations in the making.
Just, it's been delightful talking to you again, Reinette. And just any final parting words. And again, if you could repeat your website, and we'll do all we can to help you out here.
Right. So so if you want my personal website to kind of see me over the years and my blog and photos and more historical stuff, The Foghorn Express, there's a story to that too. And don't forget the THE, thefoghornexpress.com is my own personal blog. And then there is my own campaign website. We just launched it. We still are working out bugs, but you'll get the gist. And that is Elect Reinette. And Reinette is spelled REINETTE, REINETTE, electronette.com. And yeah, so check that out. And really, I'd have to go back to, we have to supersede the censorship. So we need people to go out there. If you're out in other states, tell your California friends and family, you've got to hear about electronette.com, and her campaign, what she's doing. And if you're in California, also spread the word. We've got to bypass the shadow banning and the censorship and get the word out. People have got to know that there is a different way. There is. And we're going to do this one way or another. We're going to change the face of California for the better.
Yep, I believe it. It's going to happen. And Reinette, thanks so much. I love your message. I love, obviously, the huge fan of decentralization. Let's keep let's keep doing it. We have the event starting tomorrow. I'm going to be bringing up your name as much as I can. And this event will have over 100,000 attendees. And the idea is to move this into the movement, which will be a decentralized online platform that will be using this blockchain platform that is truly decentralized, called Cordal, that we spoke at Music and Sky about. And the whole point of this is to allow local leaders, local thought leaders, local people who want to stand up to have ability to meet with others in their neck of the woods and create solutions for themselves, and then have go to states and then, or counties, then states, as this bottom up idea. So that's what we're trying to create. We're calling it the movement. It's going to be a worldwide decentralized network to replace Facebook. And it's really exciting. So just know there are a lot of people behind you that are working on solutions too, that want to support you and want to see you rise up and take out Gruesome, so that we can then implement all the stuff we want to do.
That's right. And don't forget, donate even $1.
So let's do it.
$5 donate. I tell people a $1 to $2, $5 donation, we get millions of them. That's a mandate. And that is coming from the people. So donations are huge. We're up against the big money, and we don't have the party representing us. So I have to say, do donate, please. Even if it's $1, we'll take it. That means that we're speaking for you. So thank you so much.
Microfinance Reinette's entire campaign, and so that we can start building funds, so that we can start doing local get-togethers and rallies. I know you went down to our friends down in Humboldt. They did a little action campaign down there because we know it's a captured area for sure. But yeah, let's start building out those networks so that you can start campaigning in these localities all over California. We can start having fun Reinette parties.
I can't wait. Thank you, guys.
Okay, that sounds good.
Good luck. Take care.
Thanks, Reinette. Take care.
Thanks, Reinette.
Thank you, guys. If you please share this with all your friends and family across the world. We need this message to get out. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a share. Go follow us on Odyssey, because we know the censorship's coming on these other centralized platforms we're still using. So please support us there. Go to Reinette, elect Reinette, and please donate to her campaign. We love you. Get outside. Get your feet dirty. Go plant something. Go for a nature walk. Mother Nature is the best healer and educator. And we have Joel Salatin next week for a special Christmas special, the America's most famous farmer. So are you familiar with Joel at all, Reinette?
Oh, very much so. Yes.
Yeah. So I told him, by the way, on our call, I interviewed him last week. I told him all about you. I said, go check out Reinette Senum, because you're going to love that gal. So hopefully he can start talking about you too. So awesome, guys. Thank you. Have a beautiful day, and Merry Christmas to y'all.
Merry Christmas.